Today, I have a book that I never would have read were it not for Rev Reads. For one, I doubt that I ever would have heard of this book if the author didn't send me the book in the mail. And I've even had conversations with the guy who wrote the book on the phone, and I never even knew he wrote this book. The second reason I probably would not have read this without Rev Reads is that this is not the type of book I normally read. I don't know what genre you would put this book in. Shirley stories by Dane Rogers. This is like maybe American historical fiction. You can maybe call it fictional diaries of the early 20th century. Not really sure. But Dane Rogers presents us with a book called Shirley Stories. Now, sorry, Dane, but not a big fan of the name. The name alone would have kept me from reading it, were it not the fact that he sent me a copy. But he did send it, so I read it, and here I am reviewing this book that provides us with a little trip down the road to life in North Dakota in the early 20th century. And I gotta say, life was pretty hard back then, and I'd also say it's not really as simple as people might have claimed it would be to live back then. If you have a few moments, I would like to tell you a little bit more about Shirley and why you should give this book a chance, even if it's not one that you might normally read. And let me tell you a little bit more about this journey into a world that isn't that far into the past from us, but it almost feels like ancient history now. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books that will help you to find under the radar books, please subscribe to the channel in order to stay up to date with my latest book reviews. Also, please share this video with others. Your shares, your likes are what works with the algorithms to help other people know about the work of Dane Rogers. So I hope I'm right in what I'm going to say about the background of this book. But based on how I read it, that Dane here is writing a fictional tale, or I should say fictional tales, about his own family history. The characters in it are people in his extended family, and the events themselves are only Dane and his family would know how close they are to what occurred in the past. The stories are centered around both a person and a place. The person is Shirley Rogers, and the place is Parshall, North Dakota. There are 9 different stories that occur in this book that take place sporadically over the years. Some of the stories are almost mundane snapshots of regular life. Other stories are the tragic moments that end up being etched in our minds. And I don't really want to give a lot of examples or details of these stories because part of the joy for me when reading this book actually was when I came to the beginning of each new story trying to discern, okay, where are we in history? Who are the main characters and players going to be in this chapter? What's going to be the significance of that detail? It was almost like a little mystery journey each time to pull out those events and where it's taking place. And in this book, you're going to find sudden death, tragic moments. There's also going to be the slow sorrow of old age and sickness taking those that we love. But I'll provide an example of part of one little tale in the book, just to sort of give you a little taste of what you can expect to have here. The family at one point in their years moves from Parshall to Seattle. And in one of the stories, which takes place in 1951, the family is on the beginning of the long drive from Parshall, North Dakota to Seattle, Washington. And in the drive, you have 7 kids, you have 2 parents. They're stuffed together in an old Oldsmobile. Behind them, they are pulling a one-wheel trailer that has a washing machine on it. And as they're making this journey through the middle of nowhere, one of the most common headaches occur: a flat tire. But this is a flat tire in the middle of cold nowhere, North Dakota, and so Dad ends up needing to hitch a ride to the nearest town, leaving mom and the 7 kids stranded on a hillside. And they're on a hillside, mind you, not waiting in the car because mom once heard a story of a family who was killed in an accident while they were waiting in a parked car on the side of the road. So they're all waiting on the hillside for dad to return. And so dad has to hitch a ride to the nearest town, buy a tower, buy a tire, hitch a ride back, and it tells that little story. And there's all these little vignettes of life in the Northwest at the beginning of the 20th century until finally at the end of the book, the latest generation sort of shuts the door on the family's time in Parshall, North Dakota. And as I was reading this, I was actually kind of daydreaming, like, I wish my family had a record of stories like this from my family history in upstate New York and Massachusetts, especially since I have moved my kids way down to the deep south and far removed them from their Northeast heritage. And I think it's a treasure that Dane has these stories that are based upon his family heritage that he can share with future generations of his family. I found this to be an enjoyable read. Dane pulls at the heartstrings on several occasions. And I'm going to say, if you're someone who likes reading stories or narratives on life in the early 20th century America or about those who first settled in the Northwest, you're probably really going to love this book and you're going to find these stories to be excellent. I'm somebody who doesn't normally read stuff like that, but this book surpassed my expectations. I was really nervous going into it, being like, oh no, Dane is going to send me a book and I'm going to think it's miserable and I'm not going to review it at all. But I thought it was better than I expected it to. I really enjoyed it throughout. So I would encourage you to give Shirley by Dane Rogers a try for your reading this fall.